All right, guys, it's Kelly here from Spotlight. Marina Mathieu is a friend of mine who recently shared her experience of freezing her eggs on social media. Around her 30th birthday, she and her ex-partner decided to explore egg freezing together. After undergoing weeks of treatments, including hormonal injections, early morning clinic visits, and ultrasounds, Marina retrieved 7 eggs and successfully froze 6 of them. The decision to freeze her eggs was sparked by a scene in the show Harlem that highlighted the difference in fertility timelines between two friends who happened to be Black. While one of them dreaming of having kids felt pressure due to a limited fertility window, the other, not interested in pregnancy, had plenty of eggs. Marina's openness about her egg freezing journey on Instagram demonstrates a growing trend of women taking proactive steps to preserve their fertility option. Born and raised in Haiti, Marina Mathieu has over a decade of international experience in community organizing, communications consulting, event planning, and project management. She's passionate about issues related to discrimination, human rights, and the status of women and 2S LGBTQ plus communities globally. Marina holds a BA in communication from Université du Québec à Montréal, a certificate in sexual health from Université Laval, and is currently completing a master's degree in gender, feminist, and women's studies at York University. She is a strong advocate of kindness, empowerment, equity, and solidarity for all living beings. I am really excited to be having this conversation with you today, Marina. And my hope is that this message reaches women who may have questions, concerns, and fears about this topic that is often unspoken about in our communities. So, welcome to Spotlight. So, let's start. How are you doing today?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Kelly. I'm so excited. I'm super excited to be here. To be honest, the state of the world is bringing a lot of anxiety in my life. So I haven't been doing too well, especially with my country's situation right now. But I am safe, I am healthy,
Mhm.
and I am grateful that I am surrounded by great people who care for me. So the answer is I'm grateful. That's how I'm doing. I'm grateful. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I know it's hearing about what's happening in Haiti is devastating. Every day I read about it and I feel powerless. I do feel powerless. And I really just send a lot of positive vibes because that's what I can do in addition to supporting wherever I can. But I do appreciate that level of gratitude because that's the gratitude that keeps us going, right? To
Absolutely.
otherwise we
Same.
just sometimes, yes, thinking, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on this platform and then talk about this important topic that I think is very important, especially in our community, especially for women who look like you and I,
Mhm.
because those are conversations that often happen, but like in our little intimate groups. And it was very important that I bring you on this platform so that we can talk about this. So, Marina, can you walk us through your decision-making process when you chose to freeze your eggs?
Yeah, absolutely. So the truth is, I never had envisioned that this would be my process, to freeze my eggs, to go through the process of injecting myself and whatnot. My idea was at first just to check in, to understand what's going on with me, what are my numbers. After watching that show, as you said in the introduction, after watching the Harlem episode, I was like, yo, how about me? What's up with me?
Mhm.
I was 29 at the time, and it was a perfect moment because it's in your 20s, beginning of 30s. They say maximum 35. That's where
Mhm.
you should be, that's what you should be doing. And also, a lot of women around me were in the process of either freezing their eggs or wanting to go through a fertility process, either to have children. Well, they were at that stage in their life. I wasn't yet, but I wanted to know
Mhm.
my numbers. So I went ahead and did some tests, and it resulted in me understanding that I was on the low end.
Mm.
So my fertility, so what they test, two tests mainly. The first one is a blood test, really, and they test the hormone called anti-Mullerian hormone, AMH. And depending on where you're at with your AMH, they can evaluate your fertility um, level, I want to say.
Mhm.
And for me, it was accompanied, and it's not always accompanied by an intravaginal echo. So I don't
Mhm.
know how do you call that, but c'est vraiment endovaginal. So I don't know how you
Mhm.
call it in English. But all of this to say, they put something inside of you, just like the speculum, really, but they really enter it in order to check out around your first or second period day. They look out your
Right.
follicles. So really looking into those little houses that,
Mhm.
host eggs and looking at how many you have left,
Mm.
because this will tell you how many eggs you could get. So, going through these tests, I'm 29. I feel like life is great and I can have as many children as I can, as I want. My family has been having children forever. All of my aunts never had any fertility issues, not that I know of,
Right.
anyways, because we don't talk about that a lot. But
Mhm.
when my numbers come in, the fertologist looks at me and she's like, "Well, I'm kind of worried, Marina. You're really young. You don't have any health challenges. And you have an AMH level that is very low. And very low is around zero point 0.5. In terms of AMH level, it's even considered pre-menopause when you're at that stage. So looking at that, I was like, whoa,
Mhm.
I need to get things done in order for me to secure a possibility of having children
Yes.
and for them to be in the best quality possible in terms of egg quality. So that's what led me to do the whole process at that moment in my life, because when I learned about the levels, I was like, whoa, maybe my dream of having a family isn't going to be as simple as I think. So why I'm going to get an insurance or at least options open if I want my children that comes from my womb. So
Mhm.
that's where the decision process landed of, okay, let's go
Mhm.
for this. Yeah.
Wow. And then like even look at even the journey, right? Because like you were going and just like, okay, like yes, I'm good. Like I'm Gucci. Like what do you mean?
Exactly.
And it yeah. Wow. And to that, like recent data shows that egg freezing treatments in Canada have increased from 94 in 2013 to over 1,524 in 2022, which is a huge jump. Well, huge in this, you know what I mean? It's not like huge, huge, but huge in this sense. Did you feel this growing trend influence your decision? Because you did mention earlier also like people around you were also starting to have those conversations. So you
Yes.
didn't feel too scared to go into that.
Well, I have to say, I'm a sexual health advocate. I have a certificate in sexual health. Like for me, anything related to sexual and reproductive health, I
Mm,
become a little nerd. I want to read. I want to figure out how it happens. Like at one point I wanted to be a sexologist, and then I was like, okay, no, I want to be an OBGYN. Like I really am actively interested in this. So it wasn't for me a
mm,
trend, but rather I was getting curious, really.
mm,
And as you said, the journey was I was curious to find out where I was in terms of
mhm,
fertility levels, and it led me to
mhm,
go through the process of freezing my eggs. Because if I had checked and my numbers were fine, or at least I want to say normal, but the truth is so many women face fertility challenges. I wouldn't want to put them in an unnormal, abnormal box, but I just wanted to check. And when I checked and I wasn't at a high level, I knew this was the right path for me to secure
Mm-hmm.
the big anxiety that I had. Also, let's be honest, a lot of women my age who look like me or single, and they're thinking, okay, if I want good quality eggs when I do want my children in the future, I don't want to be feeling pressured to get into a relationship just because I want
Yeah.
children. So I think there's also this pressure that they feel that they have that
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to get control over by freezing their eggs. And that's probably why the numbers are going up. I don't
Mm-hmm.
see it as a trend. I see it more as access. More
Mm.
and more people have access to these options. So that's why they're getting into doing it or considering it or getting tested for it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then studies indicate that Black women in Canada face higher rates of infertility and pregnancy complications. Were you aware of these statistics? Well, in this case, I kind of know the answer. And did they play a role in your decision?
So first and foremost, more than aware, for me, going to a gynecologist has always been a challenge. Just thinking
Mm,
about the fact that so many women I know have experienced violence in this setting, and obviously the lack of knowledge around issues and diseases that impact specifically Black women, let's say fibroids, endometriosis,
yes.
PCOS, etc. So for me, I was very much aware of
Mm-hmm.
the complications, the fact that, for example, there's a higher percentage of Black women who experience emergency C-sections just because, you know? So I think
Mm-hmm.
this was already in my head, and that's why I intentionally chose a clinic where there was a Black woman leading the fertility aspects of it. And I knew it was important for me to get proper care because this is so important for me, you know?
Mm,
And we're talking about my future. We're talking about the possibility of having children. We're talking about something that I want to be sitting in front of somebody that understands the challenges that I have in general
absolutely.
navigating the health system here in Canada. So for me, it was really there in my mind. But as I knew and I had heard of the work of that doctor, for me, it was reassuring to know that I would be standing in front of somebody that actually cares, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it did influence the way that I navigated this, but it reassured me in the choices I made intentionally.
Absolutely. And it's what you're saying is definitely so important. I think that when you go see someone who looks like you and then who can understand where you're coming from is so important because I remember when my first one having challenges, and that's when I was diagnosed with PCOS. And and it was a doctor who is just like you and I, a Black woman here in Toronto, who we had that conversation, and which is leading me to the next question. When she gave me at the time the bill that it was gonna for me to do this, and at the time I had a job where I didn't have necessarily the benefits and everything. When she gave me the bill to get all of my treatment and then like start working on, you know, my firstborn basically, I was like, yeah, let me think this back. Like, let me take it back and then pray on it, do something else. So I can definitely relate to the fact that it's important to do it with someone also who you know that can take care of you in a way you will take care of yourself, and then also how you want your sisters and honestly every woman to be taken care of. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So the next question is the average cost of egg freezing in Canada is between $12,000 and $15,000 per cycle. And how did you navigate the financial aspects of the process, knowing that they're based I can only speak for my group of friends. There are a couple of women who are unable to go through it because of that financial aspect.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest challenges, I think, especially in a country that's telling you we don't have enough kids and where
Yes.
is la relève, what are we doing, et cetera, et cetera. So, first and foremost, I want to dissect a little bit the process in order for people to understand. So getting tested in order
Mm-hmm.
to understand where your fertility levels are at is not what costs the money. In my perspective, if it's for me to get that echo and to get that blood test, it must have cost me a maximum of $200. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
this for me is not what was the challenge financially, knowing that I didn't have a job at that point that could secure with the insurance and cover some of the fees, because you need to know what your job can provide you. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot express this enough. I have many friends who are working for organizations that give up to $20,000 for these, and they never checked. And they're like, this seems
Mm-hmm.
to be so expensive, et cetera, et cetera. You have the power to do at least one cycle through this process. So look for it. Second, the chance that we have, anyways, I had in Quebec, knowing my age and the fact that there is a huge support in terms of fertility processes here in Quebec. I was covered for 3 cycles for the medicine.
Okay.
So not the surgery itself and the back and forth
Mm-hmm.
at the doctors. I'm really talking about the medicine. So all injections, all medicine, all pills that I had to take, everything was covered under the umbrella of a round. And you have
Wow.
3 rounds you can take with the government support. So this takes around 8 to 10K out of the equation.
Yeah.
Now, for the rest. And this is where the clinic that I dealt with, the price was for this process. It's called social preservation. And for
Mm-hmm.
this process, it cost me $6,000. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to take from my own money. I I just finished repaying it. I had it in October. So I really figured my things out and my finances in order to make it
Yes.
happen. And I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have a stable job at that point. But for me, it was important to prioritize that and figure out how to pay later on, because I knew it was a priority for me to have these eggs secure, knowing that fertility can drop at any given moment in your life. And as I was already low, I couldn't imagine in a year where I might have been, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it was important for me to do this. That being said, $6,000 is a lot of money. And you just
Yeah.
mentioned average 12 to 14K. So I'm advocating a lot, saying at least we should have the first cycle free. At least, I know in France it's different. You can have all your tests and all your processes, especially if you're under a certain age, for free, everything. And there is
Mm-hmm.
a huge list, though, for people waiting for it. But I think that as a
Yes.
society, if we are thinking about the way women are having children today, we need to start thinking about ways to support them better. And this
Mm-hmm.
also counts in terms of the workplaces where people are evolving. Why is it that we're not having the conversation with those insurance companies in order for these to be covered up to
Mm-hmm.
15K if necessary, but at least having that base of the foundation for, okay, fertility support. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
those are the two things that I think are super important, because it's not accessible to everybody.
No.
However, getting the data on where your fertility is at, for me, is the basic. And it you go to a fertility clinic, you get your meeting, you get your test, and then you have an idea. And from that point on, you know what to do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to go ahead and secure that at the very moment because you have the money available. And if not, go ask your employer, go ask, like, advocate for yourself, because I think that navigating the health system, especially as a Black woman today, it's
Very.
advocacy 101. in order to figure out what's best for you and what is possible. But the truth is we shouldn't have to fight in order to get proper care. We shouldn't have to fight
Mm-hmm.
in order to have enough money to get the care that we
The
deserve,
care,
especially
exactly.
if we choose to be parents, right?
Yeah. Oh, you're lagging a little bit. Is it me? Okay. Okay. I was like, where did she go? Um, I had a question actually that is not here, but I wanted to know, did you go to your general practitioner first to order the test for the blood test? Or is that something that you had to advocate for? Or did you like how did you because for instance for me in Ontario, I basically have to go see my doctor, my general practitioner, and say like I need this. And then like sometimes it's a little bit of back and forth. So how did you get that part done? Because I feel like sometimes that's the issue also.
So my general practitioner and myself don't get along. Let me just
Oh,
state that.
okay.
So, and in Quebec, you could be on that list to wait for a general practitioner for like 6 years. My father has been on that list for almost 5 years now.
Wow.
It's terrible. It's terrible. The accessibility to have your own general practitioner is a nightmare. So I didn't go through that path. It's a path that you can take. So, for example, if somebody's asking themselves, okay, what are my fertility levels, and you don't want to go through a clinic, you could ask a general practitioner, can you prescribe me that so that I can have an idea of where I'm at? Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's possible. Now, easier for me was contacting the clinic and being like, I need a an overview of my fertility. Is it
Mm-hmm.
possible to get a meeting? Now there is a wait list,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I had to wait almost 6 months in order to get my first meeting. And
Okay.
I got my first meeting. Based on that first meeting, the doctor prescribed everything that I needed to go test a bunch of tests. Let me tell you, if you're scared of drawing blood, it's not the moment for you to go through that process because you need to draw a lot of blood and you need to
Yeah.
take care of when is your period so you can go get that test. And then some
Mhm.
tests takes a month and a half to have the results because you have to do a pop test, you have to do a bunch of tests that or a little bit longer. But I didn't go through my general practitioner. I did tell her that I was going through the process though. She didn't
Mhm.
get involved in anything. She could see in my file all the tests that I had done, but she wasn't involved in it. It was really directly with the fertilogist in the fertility
Mhm.
clinic and the OBGYN that was in the fertility clinic. So everything was in the clinic and not related to my general practitioner, but it is possible to go through your general
Mm.
practitioner in order to request that. Absolutely.
Okay. And so the average, and then I know we talked about it earlier about the age aspect. The average age for first-time mothers in Canada is now 31.4 years. How do you think this, I don't trend, but that's the word that I have here of delayed, it says delayed motherhood is impacting women's fertility choices. It's not necessarily delayed, but how do you think, I guess I want to say this era of women having their kid a little bit later in life is impacting women's fertility choices, especially here in Canada, because you did mention, and I agree with you, that here we're always saying like, oh, have more kids, we need to have more kids. But when you look, for instance, at the cost of life of living, when you look at, for instance, at the access of daycares, you have to be on a waiting list even way before you can see your children. I think, everything that is affecting basically the choice of women when it comes to fertility.
Yeah, I think that we're not aligned government and society wise in terms of what we want, what we need um for people having like family planning. Like this is not working. The way that it's set up right now, it's not working in my personal views, especially that a bunch of men are deciding what's happening with women. Like let's be real, you don't know what it is to be a mother. You don't know what it is to have to stop working for a period of time in order to care for your child. Like it's very rare that we get a chance. I don't want to say we're not privileged here in Canada. I don't want to say that. However, I need to be clear on the fact that it's still not enough. Like it's still
Mm-hmm.
not enough and we need to do
Absolutely.
better. And I think making the choice to invest in a career as a woman now, wanting to go through life and not have to choose a partner just because you need to have a child is also influencing the way that people are envisioning building families and building communities. And obviously, you could choose to fulfill your life without having children and just be very happy and serene
Mm-hmm.
with that choice, and then maybe later on figure out, okay, I want a child, and then
Mm-hmm.
that like figuring out how do you make it work. So I think that giving choices, and I'm definitely pro-choice and pro-life, all of it. um I want I want people to feel like they have the choice to do whatever is best for them. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, not coming in contradiction to other people in society. So
Yeah.
I think that we need to be very careful in the way we navigate that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of, just what are the structures in place in order to support people to be better at parenting and giving them the tools and resources that they need, supporting people who do not choose to become parents, supporting people who are struggling and at becoming parents and giving
Yes.
them a little bit more support. Like, I think that we have a lot to work on that front as a
Yeah.
society, and it's an era of redefining things in order for it to
Yes.
actually better serve the people who are carrying children in our society. That's, for me,
Mm-hmm.
this is the way of thinking it, because if we're not aligning what we want as a government and what we want as a society, we will have more and more issues related to fertility, because it's just basic biology that at one point in life, people who have uteruses and want to birth children have a drop in their fertility levels and the quality of the eggs that they can produce. Like, let me be clear with you. My partner back then did her tests also. At the
Mm-hmm.
same time as me, she went through the process of getting all of her results. She's 6 years older than me, 6 or 7 years older than me, and she had 4 times the eggs that I had.
Oh,
Four
wow.
times. I had like eight, and then she was like at 24 or something, or 32. Like, she was at a big number.
Yeah.
Now, the number does not necessarily determine the
The
quality.
quality. Mm-hmm.
And this is why a lot of people are like, yeah, but I have a bunch of friends who are 35th and older and they have plenty eggs. The amount of eggs does not equal good quality. So, in
Mm-hmm.
order for you to be able to, and that's why, for example, I froze a number of eggs that were slightly um I lost one egg in the process of recuperating them.
Okay.
Once it's like unfrozen, I will probably lose some of them. Like, it's a matter of sustaining that whole process in order to get to an embryo at one point. And a lot of people just don't know that. They're thinking, I have a bunch of eggs, it's all good. Like, the quality of the eggs matter, and how you're going to go through the process of getting those eggs also might do that you have a bunch of follicles and then only 6 eggs show up. Like, because you are going through a lot of um stress, or you're going through, like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not eating properly, you're not taking care of yourself. Like, there's a bunch of hormonal things that impact also the quality of the eggs that you have. Anyways, all of this to say, the era is for me to start adjusting policies and support to the people who are carrying children, and not
Mm-hmm.
figuring out how we're reacting to the issues of them not carrying children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And ensuring that that care is given properly and is accessible. And lastly, the information is given to everybody so that they understand also what are their options, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, definitely. I want to jump back to something that you said, the sustainability of the eggs. And in that process, how did that make you feel? Right? So I guess it's a two-part question. The first question is, how do they find when they retrieve the eggs? How are they able, with you obviously, to determine like which one is good enough to be kept, right? That's the first question. And because you also mentioned the stress and then like the lifestyle, I mean like what do you eat and everything. How did you like how were you feeling during that time? Like the emotional toll, like the stress, the food, like how did you feel during that time?
It was a hard time.
Mm,
It was a very hard time. So first and foremost, I had, I knew what I was getting into from the, let me just, let me just, like, I knew what I was getting into because I had researched it and I knew, um, what was, yeah, what I was getting into. So
yeah.
it's just a possibility
Mm-hmm.
that it works. It's not
Mm-hmm.
that it is a fixed thing that I know it's going to work out. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know that it's going to work out. And when I knew that my eggs were already low, I knew I had, like, it's not like you have 8 eggs and they can force it out in order for you to reach 10. You have 8 follicles. And they can't guarantee that
Okay.
all 8 will be fertilized with the with the egg at the month that you're going to do the process. So, in terms of how did I feel? I felt stressed and anxious and also mad because it's like you get to do this at 29 and you're like, yeah, I'm going to be doing this early enough. I could have done this at 22.
Mm-hmm.
I could have figured out a way. I wasn't there in my life, let me be clear and honest, but I still think that every single person who might think they want a family, do it. Go through the process of figuring out where you're at fertility levels wise, and then ask your doctor or check in when you
Yeah.
think you're going to be a little bit more prepared or you might have the money to do the egg freezing. Like it it's not that complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Go figure out that first step.
Mm,
Now, once you know that there is no guarantee through this process, you have to let it go.
mm-hmm.
You're doing it as an insurance. It's just like when you pay your insurance for your whole life and you never get anything, but you know there's a backup if ever you want to try
Yes.
something else. So
Yeah.
this is how I see it, right? And to be honest, how do they figure out if an egg is viable or not? Like, it's not the amount, it's really and all the how can I say this? And all the medicine talk, there are no guarantees. You do the process
Mm-hmm.
when they see it because at first, the first time, so I take my injections and then they start
Yeah.
monitoring me and then they start checking to check the sizes of the follicles and the egg growing inside the follicles. And then they're like, okay, so right now you have 4 that look like they're gonna be okay. So after that first meeting, I was in my car and in my video on Instagram, if people go watch, this is the first part of my video where I'm crying in my car
Wow.
and I'm like, you do all of this, you take all the medicine, you follow all the process, but you're not guaranteed that this is going to work. Imagine if I had I put $6,000 in this. Like, at least give me one egg per thousand. Jesus, you know? And I
Yeah.
was like, it's not gonna work. And then after the first meeting, you have another meeting with the doctor, and they're like, oh, there's another one that's growing and that's doing okay, and blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, okay, breathe in, breathe out. You only need one egg to make this whole thing happen, right? So, and all of my friends were telling me the same thing to reassure me. And they're like, yeah, you you only need one and blah, blah, blah. So, anyways, the real thing is you need a chromosomally normal egg. That's what they say.
Okay.
So once you're there, they check it out, they put it, and then you finish the surgery, minor surgery. The minor surgery, you get home and they call you to let you know. So we can officially tell you that X amount of eggs have went through the process
Okay.
of the freezing, right? And then I know, and that's why I say to everybody, don't get too attached to all of this process because it is insurance. It is just
Mm,
insurance
it's
that
insurance.
you're trying an option, right? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I
Thank
hope
you,
I answered
Marina.
your two questions.
No, you did. You did. And thank you. Thank you. That was an impromptu question, but I felt like, okay, wait a second. Like how is that whole experience on you on you physically, right? And emotionally
Mhm.
as well. And how do they go about retrieving um the what they think is like sustainable eggs versus non-sustainable egg. So two last questions, and I know I can go on and on and on because that, to
Oh,
be
girl.
honest, this is a topic that I'm super fascinated about. Because you said earlier, like this is a era of redefining, and I truly believe that that's what's happening in this womanhood, um, at least here in Canada. I think that, especially in the community of Black women, I see a lot of women just like, redefining how they want to be seen in
Mhm.
this society. And I applaud them a lot for standing for what they think is right for them.
Mhm.
Because I think that when I think about a generation of my mom or my grandmother, it's like you gotta have kids. You just have to you gotta have, doesn't matter. And then like if some woman had infertility issues, it was hidden. You didn't have to talk about it. Let's figure out a way so that don't bring shame on the family. So we've come a long way. When I see sisters
We
and
have.
friends who are just like, no, I'm not ready yet, and I don't need a man to do this now. Like I want to do it on my own terms, and for that, it's very much empowering. So, no, that's what I'm saying. Like I can go on and on with this because it's such a important topic, and then we have to empower the next generation. And I think you did say something very important. It doesn't. Um, I think that's something that's probably going to happen more is to say to the younger women, it's like, listen, just insurance, just go in and check, and you can
What are
decide
your
what you want to
levels?
do. What are
Yeah.
your levels?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And something I just want to add to what you just said. So, two things. First, we need to understand also where we're at in terms of age, what
Mm-hmm.
age is for us today, because my mother had her three children at 30. She was done,
Mm-hmm.
at 30. I couldn't imagine myself with three children
Mm-hmm.
at 30. And it's just another generation. We see things differently, we do things differently. It doesn't make it better or worse. It
Mm-hmm.
just is different. And once we understand that it's different, which comes to my second point, technology advances with the needs that we have. And
Mm.
not like, I think that we could have done this years ago thinking, and that's why I think it's still expensive today, is because the technology is not yet where we want it to be for it to be easier to go through the process, right? But it will evolve. because that's
Mm-hmm.
what society will need, because
Mm-hmm.
women will decide up until later in their lives to have children. And then what do we
Yeah.
do with that? Because we need to adapt to the people. And I just want to say there is in our communities and other communities too, this perception of this is not a child, this is not a real child, just because I go through the egg freezing process and whatnot. I want to say to these people that you are no judge of
Mm.
what is or is not a child.
A
Like,
child. Yeah.
we need to let go of the idea that we are the people who determine, like, as much as adoption can be an option for someone,
Yes.
it's their child. As
Mm-hmm.
much as the egg freezing process, IVF processes is another option for somebody else, it is their child. And you are no judge to determine that. You have your beliefs, your way of doing things, and sometimes it works that way. Don't get me wrong. I
Mm-hmm.
wish I didn't have to spend $6,000 and my fertility levels were hitting the roof and whatnot. But it wasn't my situation. And in
Mm-hmm.
order for me, because I want children later on, to go through this process, I decided to go through another path. It
Yes.
didn't make it less or more. It just makes it different.
Different.
That's it, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Okay. So your experience was sparked by a scene from the show Harlem. How important do you think media representation is in raising awareness about fertility options for Black women?
Fundamental. Fundamental. I'm doing a master's right now on media representation, specifically Black women, Francophone women, and Quebec. And I think that's something that when I arrived in Canada, that was so missing in televisions is seeing myself and understanding that I either could do it or that it was an exception to go through that path of being in communication and talking in front of a screen or on television, you know? And it's the same for everything in life. Seeing more, and that's why it was so important for me on my Instagram to share my story. And you wouldn't believe the amount of people who reached out to me talking about their own processes, talking about the fact that they never thought that it was accessible to them because
Mm,
nobody around them ever said, listen, you don't have children right now. You don't need to stress it out. Let's go test and then see if ever your fertility window is still open and you can make sure to actually put your eggs away and then figure out something later and put down that pressure in your head to have insurance. I believe fundamentally that
mm,
this conversation needs to happen everywhere and on all subjects. When we're
mm.
talking about PCOS, fibroids, endometriosis, these things, sometimes people are feeling like they're crazy with symptoms.
Yes.
They're going wild. They have so much pain. They have, like, why do we need to do that to ourselves, you
Yeah.
know? Creating spaces where we can see people going through it. I follow a bunch of OBGYNs that actually tackle these issues. I wish my dream is to be able to do a movies, a series, to go meet them, to talk to them,
Mm,
create that type of conversation that really demystifies all things related to sexual and reproductive health because it is our right to have access
yes.
to proper care. It is
Yeah.
our right. And once we see more people having it, we need to consider that we deserve it too, right?
Mm. And we do. And we do. Okay. So I'm gonna jumeler these two last questions. So, given your background in gender studies and advocacy, how do you see the intersection of race, gender, and reproductive health playing out in Canada's healthcare system? And what advice would you give to other women, Black women, and women of color who are considering egg freezing or exploring their fertility options?
Okay, so first question, I want to say having my background makes me the type of unicorn in a lot of rooms, especially when my community is involved. So I want to say, as I mentioned earlier, your health proper care is a right.
Mm,
And therefore, you should walk proudly whenever you're entering a space where you believe you're not the expert. You are the expert on your own health.
mm,
Many doctors, I have anemia issues, and my doctor, and that's one of the tensions that I have with my doctor, because I feel like I challenge her in a way that she wasn't expecting to ever be challenged as a doctor, right? But then I was like, listen, you might want to do that with your other patients, but right now you're with me. And this
mm.
is what I want. This is my choice. This is my life. You are the expert in what you have studied in. I have no problem with that. Give me the options that you want to give me.
Yes.
But then I know my body, I know how I'm
Mhm.
feeling, and I know I deserve proper care because that's my right, you know? So, and let's be clear, my taxes are paying for you to be here. So let's do what needs to be done, listening to the people providing you your bill
Mm,
at the end of the day. We need to flip the switch on that, you know?
absolutely.
And I do think that equity and health has a long way to go in North America. Something called access to proper care has a long way to go. Of course, people will say you're so privileged, you have access to free doctors and medicine and whatnot, but they have to listen to you. No? Like it
Mm-hmm.
needs to be a conversation here. Like we're building
Yes.
this
A
system.
dialogue.
It
Mm-hmm.
is a dialogue. So I think from my experience, that's what I would share in terms of navigating the system, because my background gives me that grounding of you're not gonna scare me off here. Like I'm in the place I'm supposed to be. And I did a movie on fibroids when my doctor reacted, but fibroids is nothing. Women in my family don't have uteruses anymore because of fibroid. A bunch of women in this world die
Yeah.
because they don't have the proper care. So no, it is not. No, it's nothing. Who's bleeding every month? I am, because I have
Yeah.
fibroids. Okay, so chop chop, catch up with me right now. So
Yeah.
this is the first thing. And then what advice I would give to anybody thinking about going through this egg freezing process? As much as you can be surrounded by the biggest community in the world, you are doing this for you.
Mm,
If you don't know that you're doing this for you, don't do it, because you will be very lonely
mm,
if you don't understand that I'm doing this for me.
mm,
And it is a lonely process. Sometimes you're alone, you're putting things inside your body. Sometimes you have high, like you can get very horny alone. You can get
mhm,
very sad alone. You're in a car after your visit to the doctor because you had to wake up at 6 o'clock because it's on the other side of town alone. You're doing this for you.
mhm,
And it takes only one egg to have one of these babies running around, okay? So trust yourself, believe that you're doing it properly, that
mm,
you're putting all the chances on your side. And once you're confident about that, trust me, nothing can stop you. So
mm,
I believe in you, I see you, and reach out to me. I'll have that conversation with you and we can go through the process. And don't be scared. Like you've gone through so much in life just by existing. I don't think that this process is the one that's going to make you fumble. So,
mm,
yeah, I believe in you, and you might feel like you're alone, but remember, billions of women have done this process before you can
mm.
do it. So, yeah.
Wow. Wisdom. You see? Wisdom over there.
Thank
Marina,
you.
thank you so much for indulging me in this conversation. Um, I I certainly learned a lot. And I pray and hope that the women and also men and everybody who listens to Spotlight gets to share it with someone they love or think that they might, use it and need it. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for being open, first of all, and being so transparent. And I know that maybe in a couple of years, we might be back here having a conversation about who knows. We don't know, right? But the journey continues.
The journey continues. One day,
Yes,
that baby might be in my belly and I want to talk about it. I will want to talk about it. I'm so excited already. So, yes, we'll be back and talk about
we'll
motherhood.
be
We'll
back.
be back and talk about childbirth, like my birthing
Yes,
journey. Like, I'm down. I'm so down and so excited. Listen, I didn't do this egg freezing process because I don't want to be a mother. I did it because that's
I
what I
know.
want to be, you know? So, I would love that. And thank you so much for having me because you're opening the door to discussions that I fundamentally believe are necessary. And you had a conversation about motherhood. So these are the things that we need to talk about just because, not for a specific reason, but just
Mhm.
because we need to normalize having those conversations,
Yes,
you know?
yes,
So thank you for
absolutely.
hosting this platform, for having it, and for continuing the work that I know is a lot. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Marina. All right, that's all for today's episode of Spotlight, our second episode where we explore the personal journey of Marina Mathieu as she shared her experience with egg freezing. Our hope is that this conversation has helped shed light on an important topic that often remains unspoken in our communities and that it inspires others to consider the fertility options with confidence. If you want to stay updated on future episodes or engage with us, you can find Afropolitan Canada on social media platforms like Instagram, Threads, or YouTube. We're also eager to hear your thoughts and feedback, so feel free to reach out to us. To Marina, huge thanks for your openness and for sharing your story with us today. Your courage and advocacy are truly commendable, and we're honored to have had you with us today. Where can they find you actually on social media?
On Instagram, LinkedIn, just type my full name, Marina Mathieu.
Awesome. Until next time, guys, thank you to all our listeners for tuning in, and we'll be back with more stories and insights soon. Take care and see you later.